Welcome to the Milsurf Mike channel. This video covers my Yugo SKS, the model 5966, as well as continuing Yugoslavian history from my Mauser M48A video, link in the card. One common feature of both my Chinese and Albanian SKS videos involve their split with the Soviet Union. This will also ring true with Yugoslavia. In the M48A video, I left off with Yugoslavian history in the early 1960s, but we need to step back here to go a little more in depth to this Tito, Stalin, and Yugoslavia split. During the Second World War, Tito's partisans liberated all lands lost to Germany with little to no Soviet help. This put him in a much better position post-war to not have to bow to Moscow. After abolishing the monarchy and winning the election with 80% of the vote, Tito would turn Yugoslavia into a socialist/communist country and centralize power. He'd use his secret police to purge former Chetniks and Luscious members, as well as other political opponents. Early on, he looked like a discount Stalin, and the Soviet Union and Yugoslavia appeared to be close to those who watched from the West. Cracks would quickly emerge that would enrage Stalin. First, instead of total collectivization, Yugoslavia would still allow small farmers to own their land and allow workers to manage industrial enterprises and share profits. Second, Yugoslavia's involvement in the Greek Civil War would create headaches for Stalin in dealing with the West. At Tehran, Stalin agreed that Greece would be within Britain's sphere of influence, and he actually held to his word, as he did not support the communists in Greece. On the other hand, Tito did back them by sending weapons and aid. Stalin feared that the West would think that Tito was acting on his behalf. Stalin demanded that Yugoslavia get Moscow's approval for any foreign policy decisions. Tito balked at this and continued to support Greek communists. Also, Tito encouraged citizens of member republics to consider themselves Yugoslavs, a nationalism that Stalin didn't like. Keep in mind that during the war, nationalistic Serbs would ethnically cleanse Muslims and Croats, while the Croats and Yugoslavia would ethnically cleanse Jews and Serbs, so there was definitely hard feelings among the republics. Stalin turned down Marshall Plan aid for the Warsaw Pact and formed the Cominform. The members of the Cominform would vote unanimously to kick Yugoslavia out on June 28, 1948. Stalin figured that Tito would crumble without Soviet aid. Tito was already secretly talking in the West and was able to accept Marshall Plan funds. Tito would hunt down and purge Stalinists in Yugoslavia, and Stalin would send assassins to try and kill him. There were at least 22 attempts. They would span from normal ways to kill him, to one attempt involving a jewelry box that released toxic nerve gas, to calling for a spy to pose as a Costa Rican delegate at a gathering and release a bacterial plague on everyone there. The latter would be called off due to Stalin's death. Stalin's death had been widely attributed to a stroke, but at least one Slovenian historian, Josef Purevec, claims that Stalin was poisoned by potassium cyanide by an assassin sent to the Soviet Union by Tito. It would mesh with the famous public letter Tito sent Stalin. "Stop sending people to kill me. We've already captured 5 of them, one of them with a bomb and another with a rifle. If you don't stop sending killers, I'll send one to Moscow, and I won't have to send a second." While Purevec's evidence is fairly circumstantial, he does delve deeper into former Yugoslavian archives that were previously missed. After Stalin's death, tensions would temporarily thaw between the Soviet Union and Yugoslavia. Tito saw a push from within to end the one-party system, but rejected this in January 1954 in an effort to seek reconciliation with Khrushchev. They would meet in Belgrade in 1955, and Khrushchev would express regrets about the split between the two nations, but he would not directly blame Stalin. Tito would reject this explanation, but Yugoslavia and the Soviet Union would resume state relations. The end of this meeting saw the Belgrade Declaration, where the Soviet Union proclaimed the right of individual countries to follow their own paths towards socialism. In a speech to the 20th Party Congress in 1956, Khrushchev would finally blast Stalin for his role in the split, and Tito would visit the Soviet Union, furthering rapprochement. Tito's hopes for the Belgrade Declaration applying to all of the communist bloc were quickly dashed when that same year the Soviet Union crushed the Hungarian Revolution and executed Emir Nagy, who sought asylum in the Yugoslav embassy. Relations between Moscow and Belgrade again cooled, but the two nations were at a détente by 1961. The Soviets crushing the Hungarian Revolution saw the Red Army's debut of the AK-47. The Soviet Union would start licensing other nations to produce the SKS in 1956, such as China and Romania. At some point between here and 1959, Yugoslavia would be given a license to produce the SKS, which leaves a major hole in logic, at least in my brain. There was again tension between Yugoslavia and the Soviet Union, yet Yugoslavian was licensed to produce the SKS, while a few years later their AK variant was unlicensed, which is why there are differences between the PAP M70 and the Comblock AK. A dearth of information exists in this area, and I've reached out to someone I consider a flat-out expert with Cold War Comblock weapons, and this was his observation. If anyone watching this has more information on this regard, please point me to the right direction in the comments. Continuing to the history, Tito would lead an alliance of non-aligned countries. Along with Nasser of Egypt, Nehru of India, Indonesia's Sukarno, and Ghana's Nkrumah, they would form the non-aligned movement of countries who didn't want to be beholden to either NATO or the Warsaw Pact in 1961. They'd also play a large role in decolonization, and the movement would eventually include 120 nations. The 1960s domestically would see Yugoslavia continue to liberalize and have relatively open borders, encouraging a tourist industry. In 1968, Soviet Premier Leonid Brezhnev would put actions to his doctrine of limited sovereignty in Czechoslovakia. Czechoslovakian leadership wished to decentralize and create more freedoms for its people and economy. Brezhnev saw this as a dangerous precedent and sent 200,000 troops and 2,000 tanks. Some of the blame was laid upon Yugoslavia for encouraging this, and Brezhnev would offer Tito this quote-unquote help in 1971 when there was a Croatian nationalistic uprising. Tito had survived Otto Skorzeny in World War II and 22 assassination attempts from Stalin, so he wasn't about to be intimidated or succumb to those large, luscious eyebrows of Brezhnev and refuse this quote help. Still, along with the rampant inflation, this would cause Tito to agree to some changes within. The 1974 Constitution would allow the member republics and Serbia's two autonomous provinces, Kosovo and Vojvodina, to form their own economic plans. This angered Serbia as provinces and other republics were split off. This created tensions that were only assuaged by Tito's prestige and charisma. Tito's death in 1980 would start to accelerate Yugoslavia's downfall, but that's a story that will need to continue in the M70 video. As stated earlier, Yugoslavia's SKS was licensed from the Soviet Union, but there's little information out there about how they obtained or were given the license, considering relations with the Soviet Union becoming cold again after the Soviets put down the Hungarian Revolution in 1956. The initial Yugo SKS would be dubbed the Politomaska Pushka Model 1959 and abbreviated PAP-M Model 1959. It was given the feminine nickname Pavkovka. An initial run of 100 carbines would be produced in 1961, and full production began in 1964 in the Pritizinche 44 plant, also known as Zavad Crvena Zastava, or Red Banner Works. The original 1959 was nearly identical to the Soviet SKS, with the exception of the gas tube radius, and the barrel wasn't chrome-lined. Yugoslavia had plenty of chromium. There was even a decent mine in Slovenia. It is speculated that since Yugoslavia was a leader in non-alignment and decolonization movements, they planned to export weapons, so this was a way to make them for a bit cheaper, while replacing the barrels on domestic military rifles was busy work and kept people employed. The SKS's replacement was already approved with their unlicensed AK variant the same year M59s came off the line. This is by no means the end of the line for the Yugo SKS. Yugoslavia didn't want to develop a separate grenade launcher, and the new rifle couldn't handle a grenade launcher conversion. Poland would be the only country in the Warsaw Pact who did not have a separate grenade launcher, but before there's angry typing in the comments, keep in mind that Yugoslavia is not part of the Warsaw Pact. Yugoslavia also decided to go with the 22mm internal tail boom grenade of NATO over the 20mm internal tail boom grenade of the Warsaw Pact. Possible reasons for this being that Yugoslavia was in the process of decentralizing, and Tito would flip his middle finger to those luscious eyebrows. Yugoslavia had close ties with NATO members Greece and Turkey, and again, they had plans to export their rifles to other non-aligned nations. They developed a grenade launcher based on the French M49-56 rifle. This was added to the barrel, making it 1.57 inches longer. The gas port would have a gas adjusting lever added to shut off propellant gas to the bore when you raise the grenade launching sight, making it so you have to manually cycle the bolt, and a rubber butt pad was added to help absorb the recoil. This would become the PAP M59-66. As production delays mounted for the M64 AK variant, this would become the main infantry rifle. A later model 59-66A1, adopted in 1970, would have a chrome-lined bore and night sights. Only a little over 59,000 of the original M59s would be produced between 1961 and 1967, many of these being converted to the M59-66. While around 700,000 Model 5966 and 5966A1s would be produced between 1967 and 1989. The next rifle in the Yugo series, the unlicensed AK pattern M70, which could also fire rifle grenades, was adopted 18 months after the M5966A1. As the M70 would filter into the military, Yugoslavia would start to export their SKSs with great success. Uruguay bought several thousand, while thousands upon thousands ended up in African countries as aid to fellow non-aligned nations and forces working for liberation from colonization. These would be made with teak stocks to work with the tropical climate. After the death of Tito, tensions which had always simmered would grow hot and turn into flat-out war by the early 1990s, a story to be covered in the M70 video. But SKSs would find their way into that conflict, finding much use of Serbian police and reservists, as well as nationalist irregulars fighting them. Many of these rifles would be imported to the USA with trench arch still on them, the cross made of beads on mine being an example. Alright, let's talk a little bit about the Model 5966 Yugo SKS. As I said, or will say in the video, depending on where I put this, this had a little bit of trench art on it with the cross made of beads. Now, I bought this at a table at a gun show where every single one of them had some trench art on them, and this is the most minimalistic of all the trench art, so I chose this one. First of all, if you want to find the date on when it was made, you just look at your serial number. And the Yugo SKSs are the only ones where they know all the serial numbers when they were made. So basically, I just got into Kehaya's and Poyer's book, and mine is made in 1970. So that's just how I know when mine was made. Now, a lot of times when you get these, you may find that they are single shot, which means, you shoot it and you have to manually cycle a bolt, so it's just a funky looking bolt action gun. But of course, it's this grenade launcher that's usually the problem. First of all, before you decide that the gas valve is corroded and needs to be replaced, you want to make sure that this is in the correct position, and this is in the correct position for semi-auto. Now, if you find that it's like that, you just push it down and go over, and that may correct it. But this is for the grenade launching firing. This basically cuts off the gas going back. This turns it to where you have to manually cycle it. Now, when they changed the grenade launcher, basically, before they did this, they would make sure their magazine was empty, the gun was on safe. They would pull the blank is basically a blank out of the rifle grenade. They would place the rifle grenade on the end, and of course, you know, they put it in there, let the bolt go forward, and even though this has the rubber butt pad on it, it was still too much recoil really for most people to fire with the shoulder, so it just kind of be in a shallow hole in the ground, and you know, you'd hold it with your offhand, and you basically just fire with your middle finger. That's the only. So that's how they'd fire a rifle grenade. Now, I've been trying to kind of find some dummy grenades, but I have been unsuccessful in that. So there it is. Now, one thing, if this is in the correct position and it still doesn't fire, it means that this valve in here is corroded. And I actually did replace this valve because this was a single shot. This is the old valve. You can see it kind of has some nice corrosion on it. And I got the new one from Murray's Gunsmithing. If you own any kind of SKS, Murray's Gunsmithing is a good site to know of because they got a lot of good parts. I've showed how to do that before. But basically, I'm not going to go through this on here, how to replace this, because that, you know, they may say modification or whatever. So maybe I'll put that in a separate video, maybe I won't. But anyway, just a short little look at my 5966. Now, if you've learned something so far, please drop a like below. Let's get back to the video. When collecting milsurps in general, you wonder what they have seen and went through, and of the SKSs, the Yugos are definitely the most likely to have seen the most. Although considering what happened in the Balkans in the 1990s rivaled the brutality not seen since World War II, at least in Europe, I don't think I have much desire to know what this one might have seen. Did I miss something? Would you like to learn? What would you like to learn about next? Please let me know in the comments below. If you'd like to learn more about Yugoslavian weapons and history, please click over here. Please join the GOA and get a discount with the link in the description. Thank you for watching, and as always, have a great day.